I-70 area, about a mile north of 70 south, and then goes south until you hit the bypass, and it comes around the bypass in the lakes. Has the whole area south and then west, and then goes. There's a little area downtown, including the convention center, and downtown the south side of Bathhouse Row, and then the line goes across Lake Ouachita between Three Sisters and Brady Mountain, and we have Buckville and western Jesseville, and the whole area up north of the lake. You can get there quicker by boat than by car.
You know, as a sitting senator myself and having District 33, mine's a lot more condensed than y'all. I feel for people like you and Senator Mark Johnson. I know he goes from here to there, and some of those folks up in the northern area and out there in the Delta, you know, spread out all over. So I want to commend y'all both just because the geographical territory is a lot. So what we did is we've got 17 questions we're going to work through in the next hour. We're not taking a break except for the bottom of the hour. And what we did was each one gets 2 minutes, and we drew for names. And Jeff, you're going to get the first question. So first of all, feel free to tell the audience a little bit about yourself regarding your personal life and your family, or anything that you think it would be good for the public to know.
Well, thank you for having me on the show this afternoon, and thank you for asking Alan to describe the district, because I historically have left out a lot of communities doing that, but it is a large district. I'm from Hot Spring County. I grew up in a little community between Bismarck and Malvern called New Roach. That's where I live now with my family. This May, my wife Suzanne and I will have been married 30 years. I'm sorry, and we have 2 adult children. My son is a Garland County Sheriff's Deputy. He and his wife Ashley live in Hot Springs. Blessed us with a granddaughter about a year and a half ago. One of the great downfalls of a political campaign is it takes time that I can spend with her, but she's one of the greatest blessings that I've ever experienced. And then my daughter is a school teacher in Decatur, Arkansas. She's a graduate of OBU, and she lives up there with my son-in-law, who's finishing his last year of law school. You know, as far as me, you know, I'm pretty simple. I love living in rural Arkansas. I love the community that I live in, and my interests involve running a little 44-acre farm, if you can call it that. My wife calls it a money pit, but it's I've endeavored to try to raise longhorn cows, which I really love. I love seeing them. The only except for Bevo, the only one longhorn I don't like. But
he probably lives up to his name.
But that'd be the mascot of UT. But no, it's a great life out there, and I've really enjoy that community and the neighbors and the friends and the family that we have out there. We attend Hickory Grove Baptist Church. We've attended there for about 20 years, and I love serving that church. It loves on our community, and love being a part of that. But
very good. Alan?
I was born in Arkadelphia, lived there a whole week. Evidently, Dad graduated from Henderson about that time, and moved to eastern Garland County, where he taught school at Cutter Morning Star in Lakeside, and was been a pastor all my life. He has, and met Jenna my junior year of high school. We were high school sweethearts. We've been married 40 years. Our oldest, Drew, lives in Odessa, Texas, works for Clayton Homes, and our youngest, Shay, lives in Bonn, Germany, where she lives with her husband and works for the UN, and largely due to the education she was able to get, which had a lot to do with school choice, which one of the reasons I'm passionate about that. The Mom and Dad started the business when I was 12, and so I not only have been involved in a family business and small business and fighting big corporations and dealing with burdensome government regulations and making payroll every Friday, but also from the startup and what that part of it is like. I've also worked. I've been on board with Ace Hardware, chaired the National Lumber Building Material Dealers, not national, regional Mid-America Lumberman Building Material Dealers Association, Arkansas, Kansas, and Missouri and Oklahoma. Been on the national board. The those experiences have been very helpful. Also, I think what I ran as a businessman, but what really came out once I got into the legislature was my years as a youth pastor, because kids and families have really been my focus, and I think that all of those together have really gave me really the experiences that are perfect for representing this district.
Okay. So let's go to the second question. We're back and forth ping pong. And so, Alan, you get the second question. Share about your, and you were touching on it a minute ago, but share about your personal and business experiences that make you believe you're qualified to hold the office you're running for.
I'm being a youth pastor, I think, and my love of kids and our work with kids has been all important as we've worked on. My passions have been education and child welfare. The business experience, knowing what small businessmen are up against, businessmen and women are up against day in and day out, and the battles that they have to face, burdensome government regulations and sometimes stupid regulations. One of the personal experiences is, I was valedictorian, a national merit semifinalist, and yet son of an educator, and yet don't have a college education. And part of that was because of lack of school choice, and forced to change schools my junior year, which I've never complained about because that's how I met my wife. But I went from would have clept out a year of college to would have had to take remedial courses. Didn't know that I had a full ride with my test scores until I was taking my kids for college visits. On the other hand, my daughter was one of the first kids and was the first child under the 2003 school choice law to change schools. And it took her 6 months to catch up in their new school. Through that, she got a full ride to UCA honors, and without that, she would not be working. She's fluent in German and French, and she would not be working for the UN in Bonn, Germany. So those experiences, I think, really, again, make helping people and education very important to me.
Okay. Jeff, share about your personal and business experience that makes you feel you're qualified to hold the office.
Well, Kim, I believe that what I bring to the table is 3.5 decades of public service. I don't have a background in business. What I have a background in is serving my community, my country, my state. And, I think that my experiences through my experience in the military, enlisting in the Marine Corps at 18, serving 3 years, going to work immediately afterwards into law enforcement as a wildlife officer and a trooper after that. I think those have kind of shaped my worldview, if you would, and is to the extent that I believe that what we can do for others really defines what, the value of what we do on a daily basis. And so I've really embraced that, and I think that some of those experiences, some of them in very dangerous situations in the military, serving in Iraq and Kuwait, and in law enforcement, being placed in some very dangerous situations, and then just kind of dealing with people in the most needful times that they could possibly have. I think it's kind of shaped me into the person that I am today, and I have this understanding and appreciation of what it is to work on behalf of others, and I believe that that experience translates into service in the General Assembly. I'm as I didn't go to college right out of high school, and I had to work as throughout my professional career part-time to get my associate's degree, my bachelor's degree, and eventually my graduate degree. And I think what not doing that to advance my career, but more so to make me better at what I do. And and I think that public service at the end of the day is adding value to the lives of others. And I think that my background in public service qualifies me for this position.
Very good. All right, so on to the next question. Back to you, Jeff. You can run on the Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green Party tickets. You've chosen to run on the Republican ticket, of which, based on how the results of your election turns out, someone will be facing, one of y'all will be facing a Democrat opponent. in District 13. Why are you running on the Republican?
The the biggest reason that I would tell you is had a concept of life. I've always felt that abortion is wrong, and for just because of the strong pro-life stance of the Republican Party, that would be enough in itself to attract me to this party to run on this ticket. But I share the values of this party, and that's why I'm running on the Republican ticket.
Alan?
I was shocked to find out when I was in my early 20s that to run as a Democrat, you had to swear allegiance to all Democrat candidates, which would have included Ted Kennedy, Barney Frank, etc. And I was shocked by that because I'd grown up thinking I was two things, a Razorback and a Democrat. And so, the first time I ran for office for the Garland County Quorum Court in 1992, I actually was Bill Clinton's area. He was on the ballot for president, and it was where he went to elementary school, where he went to church, where he was baptized. And so it was a very unique experience. But, and I told people, and I continue to tell people, I couldn't say Republican until I was 21 without saying Yankee Carpetbagger first. So it was not the name, but it is, as Jeff said, values. And, I have been involved in the Republican 1988. I have been county chairman. In fact, county chairman in Garland County in 2010. We had never held any countywide seats, never had a state senate seat. And we won most seats we had held total was 6. We won 20 out of 21. I've been on in the foundation, the ground floor of building this party in Arkansas back when folks, and they still do, point at a dog and tell you that they would run, that they'd vote for a Democrat, a dog that ran as a Democrat before they'd vote for you as a Republican. And so when I asked to do the hard work in 2012, being the first person to ever win a local election as a Republican in Hot Spring County, I went out every night for over a year to make that happen.
Okay.
And so that's why.
All right. So let's lead into the next question then, and it starts with you, Alan. How long have you been a Republican?
Since 1988. And wasn't really, as I just shared, wasn't really excited about the idea. The Republican Party was very kind to me. For the first 6 years, I very much remember every time I stood up to say anything, I would say I'm an independent who happens to be in the Republican Party. I guess I have always been a Republican, though. I tell people I'm a Reagan Republican because, my first time I voted was 1978. All I could tell you about that election until just a few years ago is that I voted against Bill Clinton, and which is, I couldn't tell you who I voted for, and then I looked it up a few years ago and I found out the guy's name was Clark. So, and then voted for Reagan in 80 because, again, the values were just, as we talk about, and I talk about with old timers who are beginning to turn Republican too, is the Democrat Party left us. We didn't leave the Democrat Party, and but as I shared earlier, I've been working to elect candidates across the state and to put conservative values here in Little Rock. That's the important thing. It's one thing to be a Republican. It's another thing to actually change the way government's working.
All right, Jeff.
Kim, that was actually after I announced perhaps the first question I was asked, and I didn't really have an answer for that. I'm one of those individuals. My story's similar to Alan's. Growing up in the community that I grew up in, my grandparents, my parents would probably consider themselves to be FDR Democrats, and that's the household that I grew up in. But as I considered running for this office, and as I read the Republican Party of Arkansas's platform, it was very clear to me that not only was I going to run as a Republican, but I'd been a Republican for much longer than I realized. I always considered myself to be a very independent but conservative voter, and so to me, it's just a question of coming to the realization that the values that this party shares are the values that I have and have had for some time, and I think that's reflective of a lot of people. Alan mentioned his run in 2012. Supported him during that election. I thought he was the right person for the job, and I was proud to be a part of that turning the state red movement that went along then, because I think it's very telling of where your average Arkansan's at right now. And I think that that more and more people within our district, as I visit with them, they share those conservative values. I don't know that they can necessarily consider themselves Democrat or Republican, but I think that they're ready to establish that allegiance to the party as we go forward, especially in light of everything that's going on now in our nation.
Okay, tell you what, we are coming up on about 3 minutes to the bottom of the hour. And so what I'm going to do is give you 1 minute each, because you've kind of hit on it already, but just kind of wrap it up in summary. I'm going to give you 1 minute each. So Ben, help me out there. So to you, Jeff, how would you define conservatism?
I think it, and I've touched on them as you said, but I think it, when you think about conservatism, it's a limited government, government not necessarily telling people how to live their lives. And I think the probably very good is how do you find that balance between liberty and law? On both extremes of the spectrum, you have anarchy and you have totalitarianism on the other end. And how do you keep from moving toward either one of those? And I think that's a challenge for us as we think about public service, that we find that balance. But I think it's individual responsibility, initiative, and and being responsible for our own happiness and our own success.
Okay, Alan.
Conservatism, involves traditional values, including property rights, and and a lot of things that just go right along with being constitutional because of what a fine document our Constitution is. But I think what I found over the decades is that conservatism overall, and it's not that there aren't any atheists that are conservatives, because there certainly are, but conservatism overall sees that we don't have all the answers, that God has the final answers, why the traditional values come into conservatism. And then the other side, the opposite of conservatism, comes back to man having all the answers, and man certainly doesn't have all the answers. And so in the end, conservatism is not looking to man, it's looking to a higher power, and that's why we come back to those traditional values.
Very good. All right, we're going to go to a break here in just a second for catching up with the news and everything that's going on in the world today. Want to thank those that make this show possible. Everett GMC Buick down there in Saline County at the Alcoa exit. Phillips Mouty Penfield Realtors there at Spring Hill and Highway 5 down in Saline County. And through Central Arkansas, Edwards Food Giant. This is the Kim Hammer Show you're listening to. When we come back, we have in studio Senator Alan Clark, challenger Jeff Crow. They are running for the seat on the Republican ticket for District 13. When we come back, some of the questions we're going to look at is, first of all, what's your position on taxes? And then talk about social issues and how the law affects, or the social issues affect the law, and how involved should we be in directing social issues as governed by the law. We're going to talk about the state budget, school choice. We're also going to talk about the direction that the state is going, and we're going to give them each a chance to talk about what's going to be important to them in the upcoming session should they be elected. We're going to talk about the infrastructure, and we're going to get a position on abortion. This is Kim Hammer Show. You can call into 501-823-0965 or go to my Facebook page, and you can find a way to send in a question. See you after the bottom of the hour.
Hey, it's Dave Ellswick. You know, cost is the biggest reason most of you don't check into private and Christian schools for your kids. And we want to change that. We've got partnerships with schools all over the area that's offering half price, that's right, half price, 50% off their tuition. See the complete list of schools at dealsforlittlerock.com. For more information, call Lynn at 501-404-6545.
Let's face it, we love Alexa, and we love to let her find your favorite radio station. This one, of course. We love it too when she finds us, but she could find us easier if we taught her a simple skill. To get started, simply say, Alexa, enable the Answer Little Rock skill. After she confirms, you can then say, Alexa, play the Answer Little Rock, and Alexa will learn how to find us. You can listen to us through your Amazon Echo, Echo Show, Echo Dot, and Amazon Tap devices. Alexa, what is your favorite radio station?
That's easy. 101.1 FM, The Answer.
This is the Sean Hannity Show.
We ever going to resolve the General Flynn matter? Poor guy. They didn't even think it was lying. We're going to go after your son. We're going to go after your family. Well, they already got his house. He had to sell his house for lawyers. It's like roadkill to them. I mean, if the FBI guys that interviewed General Flynn, we now know, never thought he was lying. Well, okay, then why did you make this guy, agree that he had lied to the FBI?
Larry Elder sees the media giving the DNC a pass.
The fiasco known as the Iowa caucus is still unfolding as we speak. Can you imagine if this were a Republican caucus, what they would be saying right now about how incompetent Republicans are, about all the incompetent boobs that President Trump has put into positions of responsibility just because they know somebody?
The Larry Elder Show, weeknights at 6, right before Sebastian Gorka at 9 on 101.1 FM. 101.1 The Answer's app is available for download now. Yeah, sure, you can listen to the station on any of your mobile devices, but that's just the beginning. The TalkBack app allows you to voice your opinion and send it directly to us with the touch of a button. Use the Call the Studio to participate in your favorite show. And then there's Dave. Lots and lots of Dave.
So they can dump all sorts of toxic materials.
Go to your phone's app store and search for 101.1 FM, The Answer, and download our app for free today. Hugh Hewitt explains what the impeachment fiasco was.
Those achievements include, and you might want to take a seat here, Trump haters, a massive tax cut, 3.5% unemployment, the country's exit from the Iran deal and the Paris Climate Accords, a renewed Israeli alliance, a massive regulatory rollback. The partisan House's impeachment is a pebble thrown at the political battleship that is that list.
The Hugh Hewitt Show, weekday mornings at 5, right before Mike Gallagher at 8 on 101.1 FM. The Answer.
On the next Dave Ellswick classic movie, the aging patriarch of an organized crime dynasty transfers control of his clandestine empire to his reluctant son.
What do you think this is, the army where you shoot them a mile away? You gotta get them close like this, and bada bing, you blow their brains all over your nice Ivy League suit.
Directed by Francis Ford Coppola and starring Marlon Brando and Al Pacino.
Someday, and that day may never come, I'll call upon you to do a service.
From 1972, The Godfather.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
When the aging head of a famous crime family decides to transfer his position, a series of unfortunate events starts happening to the family.
And as a reasonable man, I'm willing to do whatever's necessary to find a peaceful solution to these problems.
The Godfather shows one time only, Tuesday, February 11th at 7 p.m. at the Riverdale 10 VIP Cinema. The Godfather, the next classic movie from Dave Ellswick and 101.1 FM, The Answer.
What the hell is this?
That's a Sicilian message. It means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes.
All right, welcome back to the Kim Hammer Show on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. Again, I want to thank those folks that make this possible. Everett GMC Buick down in Saline County at Alcoa Exit. Phillips Mowdy Penfield Realtors. They're at Spring Hill and Highway 5. You're looking for property in Saline County, even rental, commercial, or residential. Good place for you to go. And then Edwards Food Stores throughout central Arkansas, over even into the Delta over there at Forest City, Marianna, and Harrisburg. Great stores. And so we appreciate those individuals. We're going to get right into it because we have Senator Alan Clark and Challenger Jeff Crow, who are in studio running on the Republican platform for the primary, and the district is District 13. And we're going to pick up with the question of who had the last question. All right, okay. Alan. So, what's your position? What's your position on taxes, Alan?
I think on taxes that the Boston Tea Party is very instructive. And I, often when I talk to conservative groups, I tell them, that the Boston Tea Party was not about not paying taxes. It was about taxation without representation. And I think that the issue we ought to be most sensitive about, or at least one of the issues we should be most sensitive about is taxes and how people feel about them. And so, whenever possible, I think citizens ought to decide what the taxes ought to be. And since we are elected to represent them, when it's not on the ballot for them to decide, that we ought to be listening very closely. And when they say no, even though I may personally think it's something that we ought to do, that the answer ought to be no.
Okay. And for the listening audience, those viewing on Facebook Live, the candidates agreed at the bottom of the hour, we're going to cut the answer time to 1 minute so we can get through our list of questions. And also we have a question coming in from a listener that we'll get to in just a second. So, Jeff, what's your position on taxes?
Kim, for me, taxes is always about stewardship. And I don't know of anybody that particularly likes to pay taxes, but I think it's important that we understand that when we're spending the people's money, that it's being spent for its intended purposes with the greatest efficiency possible. And I think the better job we do in doing that we can create an environment where we are lowering taxes because we're making more of the dollars that we have. I'm reminded of my time at the Game and Fish Commission as director, and I remember reminding our staff on a continuous basis that, we're the agency responsible for the stewardship of our fish and wildlife resources, and we should be likewise the great stewards of the people's money. And so I think that it just needs to be stewardship. If it permeates throughout the organization, throughout our government, that's the common. If that's the culture, then I think we're going to be doing what we should be doing with the people's money.
All right. And so next question, Jeff, to you. What is your position on social issues as it relates to the establishment of laws? And let me kind of give you a flavor for that. So last time we dealt with medical marijuana. We know that there's a push now, which they said they wouldn't, but they are, which causes me great concern that you would, say we're not going to advance this, but here you are advancing it. Makes me, that's kind of editorial on my part, but we're dealing potentially with the legalization of recreational marijuana. You've got all the criminal aspects as far as social reform, justice reform, and then, dealing with issues of marriage. So when it comes to the things that impacts our society and the laws that we make, give the people an idea of your philosophy. I believe medical marijuana and recreational marijuana are good examples of that. I was personally opposed to that. I believe that we have to, as I mentioned earlier, find that balance between liberty and law. But, we have to consider the impacts of the laws that we enact and how they impact our communities and our citizens. And, so I think it's I think there's a very bright line, and I think that we should not cross that. But, I believe that government exists to protect people, protect their property and their rights, and and I believe that whenever when we start crossing over that bright line toward those areas that have harmful impacts on our communities, then I think that's something that we need to be very concerned about. So, Alan, your position?
I've got a libertarian streak a mile wide, and freedom is always way up there. But like Jeff said, you've got to strike the balance between liberty and law. Whenever possible, we should not deal with social issues. But you take abortion, for instance. Abortion is taking the life of a human being. So that's a social issue that is not just a social issue. It falls into a moral issue, and because we already say you shall not steal, you shall not murder. That's in the law. Medical marijuana, I would tend to say you can do whatever you want to do. Having dealt with child welfare for the last 8 years, the 18% of the kids that the state took in 2008 was related to drugs in some shape or form. Last year, it was at 50%. And so I'm not for anything that opens up drugs anymore. And so, but there's that fine line: is where do I allow liberty, and where do we where do we get involved? And so, but law when you have to, liberty any other time.
All right, so we're about halfway through the questions, but one of our listeners in the audience sent in a question. Let me ask you, and I want to commend you both because you've come in on good terms. We had good ground rules of understanding. I shared with you I didn't want this to turn into the Democratic debate and what debacle you see when they're up there on stage and everything. But y'all are agreed to answer this question sent in by a viewer or by a listener. So I'm going to defer to you first, Jeff. How the question was, how do the candidates differ from their opponents? So let's just stick with who's in the room because I know we got a Democrat opponent out there,
Sure.
but we're not worried about that. So Jeff, how do you differ from Alan?
You know, I view this race as a application process. I believe that it's up for they're taking applications every 4 years, and you know, I think that the feedback that I get from residents of the district as I travel around the district is that they feel like that we need to do a better job of representing the interests of the people in the district. I mentioned I supported Alan when he first ran, voted for him. I was happy that he got in there, and I think that it's good to have an examination of one's record. I think a primary is good for the party, and I think it's opens a good and honest dialogue about the issues that are important to the folks of the district. And you know, I believe that's correct because of the reinforcement, because of the encouragement that I've received from the people in the district. And you know, I think it's just an opportunity to have a conversation about Alan's record and what I believe is important.
Alan,
I think probably the biggest difference between Jeff and myself, and looking at his answers and what he's had to say in the newspaper, et cetera, is I am much more in favor of the citizen. I think Jeff bends more toward government. And I'll give you an example on taxes. He said he would have definitely voted for the fuel tax. I went out into the community and talked to hundreds of people. In fact, I actually started in Bismarck, at the dollar store and at the post office and at the banks. And the overwhelming majority of the people said, don't vote for a fuel tax. They said, you can put a highway tax on the ballot, but don't vote for one. And he says, he would vote for it regardless. And I just, I think that's a fundamental difference. When it comes to child welfare, he is more fearful that we will mess up because we didn't let the state take care of things, and I am more fearful that we will mess up because we took away the rights of citizens.
Very good. All right. So one of the greatest amounts of the state budget is allocated to public schools. Share your thoughts on schools in general and state any position you may have with regards to the future directions of how schools will look in the future. Alan?
Well, boy, that's not a 1 minute question. As a son and son-in-law of educators, everybody in my family graduated from public schools. Education is a passion, and we have to continue my work on reading, literacy, dyslexia. Everyone agrees on how important fourth grade reading level is. We've got to continue to work on that. And that means, helping the teachers in the classrooms. And we've also, another very important thing we've got to do is continue on career education. When we start taking shop and home ec and things out of the classroom, we really messed up.
Jeff?
I agree with Alan's remarks. I would add to that I'm not a person to say that I'll come in with all the answers to fix education, and there's a lot of opinions about what we should do to improve the education of our children. What I do know is that we will never reach a destination when it comes to this. There will always be room for improvement when it comes to educating our children. And I think it's important for someone entering into the legislature to listen, not to respond or not to counter, but to understand what the problems are. And I think there's a lot of very talented people that have a voice: parents, administrators, educators, legislators, people that work in the executive branch. And I think that the solutions are out there, but I think we have to come in with an open mind and have that open dialogue.
All right. So, Jeff, one of the second great amounts of the budget that is spent, not counting federal dollars that are sent back down to support the Medicaid budget. What are your views or philosophies about expanding Medicaid services, especially in view of the fact that it seems like President Trump, thank God for him, is looking at expanding block grants to the state?
I don't know of anyone that's happy with Obamacare. I think that our nation was handed a really raw deal on that. I believe the private option and the current Arkansas Works, as we know, is in the courts right now, is our best option that we have available. My concern is that we provide those services to people that truly need it, but the people that are able-bodied working individuals that we don't pay a dime for that. And so I think that's as I visit with constituents, I think that is, I think that's the thing that's on their mind. And so I would kind of reserve a lot of comment on that until we see what the courts do on the Arkansas Works.
Alan?
I think that Trump and the Republican administration talking about block grants is an answer to prayer. Block grants means that instead of the feds giving us all these rules about what we have to do, and if you talk to people who are recipients of a lot of this help, they'll tell you that it's wasted and it's not working well. Although it's very badly needed. But with block grants, the state of Arkansas is able to decide how to spend the money versus top down, the feds telling us what to do and us not being able to do the things. And we can decide. We've got lots of problems with mental health. You just go, whether it be children, whether it be the elderly, we can come in and decide how to use it, what to do best. And this is a Republican idea whose time has come.
Alan, are there any particular areas that you have of interest in working in legislatively if reelected?
Yes. Of course, we've got a lot more to do with education, especially reading, with the science of reading and getting our getting that foundation laid. And that includes, we've still got a couple of colleges that we need to get on board. Even firing a shot across their bow with I think threatening to, we won't actually cut their budget, but threatening to cut their budget if they're not going to teach the right things. And of course, child welfare, we need to open up our courts like Georgia's doing. We're going to bring some judges in from Georgia, from Texas, from Minnesota. Great things are happening when we're making those courts open rather than secret in other states.
Jeff?
One of the areas that I would like to work on is an area that through my experience in law enforcement and training is to improve the best practices to keep our schools safer. I believe that the governor was wise to form the Safe Schools Commission, and they produced a great document. But I rather than that document gathering dust, I think that we need to apply some action steps to that. And establish some best practices when we talk about prevention of school violence. Have a cohesive threat assessment, crisis intervention process in place. I think that we need to do much more work in the hardening of our facilities. I still go to public schools that don't have locks on classroom doors, and we know in 20 years of studying these events that no one's been shot behind a locked door. And so it's just kind of some low-hanging fruit out there, and I think that we have a lot of work to do there, and I think that that's something that I would want to apply my experience, my background, and what expertise I have and colleagues I have that work in that area to improve that.
Very good. Shout out to those making the show possible. Everett GMC Buick down in Saline County, Phillips, Mouty, Penfield, Realtors down there in Saline County, also Edwards Food Stores throughout Central Arkansas. Appreciate all those businesses for helping make things possible. Let's skip down to number 12 because y'all have kind of hinted around number 11. Number 12, when you're looking at the direction that some of the other states like Virginia are going, what are your views on the Second Amendment? And let's group 13, question 13 in there with regards to the red flag laws. Jeff?
Just a minute.
Just a minute. Sorry.
Okay.
We'll come back if we got time.
My heart breaks for the folks of Virginia and what they're going through. And, I think that's why it's so important that we pay attention to these state legislative races. And there are two candidates in here that are staunch supporters of the Second Amendment. And, I I can tell you that a lawfully armed citizens never caused me as a career law enforcement 1 second's problem. And I think that that's something that is important to make that distinction. That the problem is criminals, the guns in hands of violent criminals, and that's what we have to address. And as far as red flag laws go, I'm not in support of any version of that I've ever heard about, that I've read or seen. And, I think that it just opens the door for a lot of abuse. And so for that reason, I would oppose red flag laws.
Alan?
I'm going to begin with red flag laws. Dealing with child welfare, where we make an end run around the Constitution on a regular basis, and seeing how badly that can go. I definitely cannot support that in another area, like taking someone's guns. Although I do think we need some better mental health laws. I have worked very hard from being a co-sponsor of Act 746 to other proactive Second Amendment legislation. It's something that near and dear to me. None of your other rights matter if you don't have the Second Amendment. And I'm very proud of the fact that the NRA, and I believe that all the other gun rights groups will be endorsing me in this election.
Alan, what are your views about how to address the needs of the infrastructure of the state?
First, we have, by infrastructure, do you mean highways?
Predominantly highways, because that's what's dominating the conversation throughout the state.
We have put the sales tax on the ballot. I don't like making it part of the Constitution, but according to the Constitution, the only way we can put it on the ballot is to make it a constitutional amendment. You can't put it on the ballot otherwise. If we're going to pay for 16,000 miles of highways and do the things that we need to do, there's going to be a cost to it. I wish that we at the same time had put something in it to reel the highway department in some, not to take away all their independence, but to make them more responsive to the legislature.
Jeff?
I think that infrastructure is one of the largest concerns we have. That the people that I visit with throughout the district that they're concerned with, and that's primarily highways and our bridges. Our communities, our citizens are having to travel on some very treacherous roads, and I think it's unconscionable that they have fallen into the state of disrepair that they have, and I know that it costs money to fix those. My concern. And the reason that I supported Governor Hutchinson's his effort out of the last session and agree with him on issue 1 is that this isn't going to get cheaper. It's just the more we defer the maintenance and the repairs of these roads, that price tag is going to go up, and it's also going to come up at the cost of the safety and the lives of our citizens, and it's also going to have an impact on our economic development. As we try to attract industry into our state, to provide these good-paying jobs for our citizens, it's difficult to do that whenever they don't have the infrastructure in place to do that. So I view it as an investment.
So, Jeff, what do you see as the top issues confronting us as a state?
Well, I think that's part and parcel to what the infrastructure needs as we think about economic development and how we attract industry into our state and provide those good-paying jobs for our citizens. Far too many of our best and brightest are leaving the state for opportunities in other parts of the United States. And, I think that's unfortunate because we have a quality of life here that's unsurpassed by other states. We have all the ingredients to have a great place to live and work. And I think that we have to really focus on developing our workforce and bringing in those industries to have those opportunities for our next generation.
Alan, top issues as you see it?
Jobs, taxes, education, child welfare, water. All those but water are interrelated. Education, having our tax burden relative to other states where we can attract jobs is very important. Having an educated workforce is the bigger thing that companies are looking for. Like I said, those things are very closely related. Water, we haven't talked about at all. 85% of our 649 water providers across the state are upside down financially. And if we don't have water in our rural areas, as those systems start to fail, we're going to be in real trouble. And I will continue to lead on that front.
All right. So, Alan, let's cut it 30 seconds. Position on pro-life, abortion, pro-choice.
Sanctity of life is one of the things that brought me into politics, actually, when Jana was expecting Drew. And I don't think there's anything more important in a society than protecting the life of the innocent, period.
Jeff?
Protecting the innocent life. You know, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. It all begins with life. And, you know, that is something that I will not waver on. And will be till the Lord calls me home.
Very good. All right, so we got 3 minutes left, so here's the deal. I'm going to start with you, Jeff. This will be the 1 minute. Tell the people what you want them to know. Open mic.
Oh, well, thank you. You know, what I want people to know is that for 37 years, you know, I've served my country, my state, my community. I've tried to serve with honor, courage, and commitment. And, you know, those are the core values of the United States Marine Corps. And, you know, I've tried to apply those to everything that I do. I've lived a life of service to others, and I know that to do that, it can't be about you. It has to be about those that you serve. And you know, I believe that that's needed in our state senate and in our legislature. And you know, I think that I'm the person to do that. And so I'd appreciate the opportunity of all those in District 13 to give me that opportunity.
Alan?
I'm a proven conservative. My voting record stands for itself. My constituent service stands for itself. My staff tells me I have more constituent work than any other district. That's because I'm out there so much, seeing so many people, at least 4 events a week. And you know, this is one of the greatest honors I've ever had, that the people elected me to be their state senator. I take it very seriously. We have a lot of work to continue to do on education, child welfare, water, and other things, and I would very much appreciate the people continue to support me and help me do that work.
Very good. Gentlemen, I want to commend you. Thank you for coming in today. We've had in studio today the 2 candidates on the Republican ticket for the primary vote in March. Remember that the primary this year has moved up to March so we can be a player at the national level, and that's for District 13, Senator Alan Clark, sitting senator, challenger Jeff Crow. You've been listening to on the Kim Hammer Show today. Appreciate y'all listening. Next week, we'll have a couple other candidates. You'll have to listen to see who it is that's going to come back. Want to thank our sponsors, Everett GMC Buick down Saline County, Phillips Mounty Penfield, also Edwards Food Giant in Central Arkansas. If you're looking at me on Facebook and you wonder if I'm ducking or dodging what's going on, John and I behind the glass have a clear communication chain going on as far as the amount of time. I always want to thank Ben Bowers. He sits over here. He takes care of a lot of communications for me. He also follows as far as getting the questions in. And I've been pointing down here telling these guys 15 seconds. So I appreciate the way in which they've conducted themselves today. This has not been the Democratic debate challenge, and thank God it hasn't been. Besides that, it won't matter. The Republicans are going to take everything back in the fall, and we look forward to that. This is the Kim Hammer Show you've been listening to. Look forward to seeing you back next week, and appreciate you listening.
.1 FM, The Answer. KDXE FM, Kamak Village, Little Rock, a Salem Media Group.